Okay, I think that this is all of the books from this month, or at least all the physical ones. But this is my wrap up for January of 2024. And I read 10, yeah, that sounds right, 10 books this month. So let's get into it. So throughout this video, I'm gonna have to be checking my Goodreads and my notes that I took, because I'm not good at remembering things like immediately after I finish the book. I sit down and like type up what I thought, because I'm like, if you ask me a month after I read something what I thought, I'll be like, I do better when I've written down my thoughts immediately after finishing it. But I read 10 books this month, and the first book I read, not me blanking, no, I know what it was. I was doing a reread of the A Court of Thorns and Roses series when this year started. So the first book I read this year was A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J Maas, which I've read before. And it is one of my favorite books. I love Sarah J Maas. And I was doing that reread in preparation for Crescent City 3. A Court of Mist and Fury, I have my notes about it. Obviously, I rated it 5 stars. I am what we call an easily pleased reader. It doesn't take a lot for me to give 5 stars. And then like later I'll be like, why did I give that 5 stars? I think sometimes like in the like aftermath of reading a book, I'm like, well, I loved it so much, I have to give it 5 stars. And then maybe like a few weeks later I'll be like, that probably didn't deserve to be a 5-star read. But this one is actually a 5-star read. It's my favorite of the A Court of Thorns and Roses books, and I just love everything about it. Also, in addition to rereading this, I have sparked something amongst my friends. I've told them all for the longest time that they need to read these books, and they finally decided to listen to me this month. And so that's why I don't have my physical copy of that one, because I've loaned it to a friend, as well as my copy of A Court of Thorns and Roses. Someone else is borrowing that right now, although I read that in December. Yeah, I've finally convinced them, and it's really funny to watch people read A Court of Thorns and Roses and then A Court of Mist and Fury in real time and watch like them change their minds. I won't say about what, in case there's anyone watching this video who doesn't want spoilers, but it's interesting to watch people like realize things in the second book. And the other night my friend Kelsey was like, I can't talk to you, like I can't believe you didn't tell me this. And I'm like, well, the whole time though I felt like, I know something you don't know. I love A Court of Mist and Fury though, and it introduces all of my favorite characters in the series, and it's just such a good book. And also it like the pacing of the book is so good, and she like, I don't know how Sarah J Maas does it, but I never want to set her books down. The only one of her books I've ever had trouble getting into was the first Throne of Glass book, and once I finally got over that hump, like I just like read the whole series. But she's just such a good author, and it's really fun to be watching my friends get into A Court of Thorns and Roses and love it just like I do. Next book I read this month, I've also loaned out to someone, because I didn't read exactly in order. So I hadn't read Crescent City before the beginning of this year, and I was like, well, I want to be ready when Crescent City 3 comes out. So I just decided to read them like in this month, so it'd all be like fresh on my mind. And I read House of Earth and Blood. That was the next thing I read, and I loved it. I did not know how I was gonna feel about like modern sort of fantasy, but it actually has turned out to be like House of Earth and Blood is my favorite of her debuts for a series. Like, not my favorite of her books overall, but in terms of like, it's the best of the first novel for any of her series. Not to say A Court of Thorns and Roses and Throne of Glass aren't good, but House of Earth and Blood is just so good. And it's surprising to me when I read it. I was like, this doesn't feel like the first book in the series, but it is. And it's so good. And maybe that has to do with the fact that it's 800 pages long, but it's just such a good book. I love Bryce and Hunt. I love them. People who don't like Hunt, get behind me. Like, I don't understand people who don't like Hunt. It just like boggles my mind, because I'm like, what has he done? What has he done that has made you guys like, I mean, I guess what he does at the end of House of Earth, but like, he just loves Bryce so much, and I really enjoy that. I love Rune. And oh, my other thought about this book, I do not know what to think about Danica. I want to like her, but there's more to say about that that I read in House of Sky and Breath. But I like devoured this book. I feel like I read it in like less than 2 days, which is what I did with Sky and Breath, and then Flame and Shadow as well. These books are just so good. Also, I forgot to do this for A Court of Mist and Fury, but I write down my favorite quotes from the book, and some of my favorites from House of Earth and Breath. Obviously, through love, all is possible. Danica's right about that. And then I think this is also a Danica quote. I'm pretty sure it is. That's the point of it, Bryce. Of life, to live, to love, knowing that it all might vanish tomorrow. It makes everything that much more precious. And then this last quote. Oh, I think I'm gonna say her name wrong. Leheba? The Sprite, this last quote. Oh my gosh, my heart. Then let the world know that my first act of freedom was to help my friends. And her also, I didn't write it down, but my friends are with me and I'm not afraid. It's giving Aelin. It's giving Aelin Galathynius. And I just like, you can connect the dots between all of her series and her characters, and I just love them so much. Third book I read this month, House of Sky and Breath. Look who has on the front. I love Hunt. This is the Barnes & Noble exclusive, which is why it's so pretty. I love it. I really enjoyed this book. It was almost more of a page turner than the first one was for me. And I just liked, there's so many interesting characters in this series, and I feel like in this book we got to dive in deeper into more of those, like Ethan and Tharian, etc. But the ending devastated me. And first thing I wrote down was like, I'm so glad I don't have to wait very long for Flame and Shadow. I'm like, for those of y'all who waited over a year, I'm so sorry. You deserved better. It's just such a good series, but that ending was rough. It's like Mark of Athena to House of Hades rough. It was that kind of cliffhanger for me. I mean, not for me, because I didn't have to wait a year, but if I had been on the receiving end of that, knowing where Hunt and Rune were, I would have lost it. I'm excited to see more about, or I was excited to see more of Ethan's storyline. Obviously, I've read A Flame and Shadow now. This, I'll say this now, because I've already read Flame and Shadow, but this is from this book into that one. Like, Therion is bad decision-making express from Sky and Breath into Flame and Shadow. He's just... I don't know what he's doing, but it's not what he should be doing. I know he doesn't have much of a choice, but I just kept, like, decision after decision. I was like, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Like, I just couldn't believe that he was doing one thing after the other. I wanted better for Cormac. That made me sad. The other thing, okay, I said this about House of Earth and Blood, and then I was like, I'll get into it more in Sky and Breath. What we learn in this book, I just, like, that's what made me be like, Danica, like, I don't know. I really understand Bryce, because I'm like, it feels like she didn't know her at all. Like, she kept all these things from her, and just learning what we learn in Sky and Breath, it's like, which I understand why, but to not tell Bryce anything, it's just, I can understand, like, I can't imagine if my best friend did that to me and then died. And then it's like, oh, here's all these things she kept for you. Oh, and there's some more. It feels like you don't really know her at all. But I do think what she did was with Bryce's best interest at heart and the world's best interest at heart. It just, like, also hurt Bryce. I wanted more about Ariadne and the sprites. And I'll go ahead and say, I could say this in my review of Flame and Shadow, but I'll go ahead and say, did not get enough of them. There was, like, well, the sprites, but nothing about Ariadne, pretty much, in Flame and Shadow. I mean, she was there, but she didn't do much. And I thought, at the end of Sky and Breath, that Sarah was really setting it up for them to be more important than they were. I mean, I'll put a disclaimer at the beginning of this, but I'm not spoiling anything directly, but, like, general spoilers. Like, I'm not going to tell you exactly what happens in the book, but I did just say about Flame and Shadow that Ariadne doesn't really do much in it, which I know there were, like, theories out there about her being important. Yeah. Disappointed in her. End of Sky and Breath. Agents Day and Night. Left me speechless. Sarah does it once again. The other thing I wrote down about Sky and Breath, which is Hunt Athlar deserves 1,000,000 times better than what he has got. I just want him and Bryce to be happy. That's how I feel about all of the main SJM couples. I just want them to be happy. But, gosh, the end of Sky and Breath was rough for me. My notable quotables from this one. Our love is stronger than time, greater than any distance. Our love spans across stars and worlds. I will find you again, I promise. His smile broadened as he walked out. I never would have met Bryce, and every horror, every nightmare, all of it had been worth it for her. And the third one. We don't let them decide who we get to be. We'll carve our own paths. And there's a fourth quote, but it's an absolute spoiler for the end of Sky and Breath, so I will not say anything. But if you know, you know. We are now reaching what I read in between finishing the Crescent City books and waiting for the third Crescent City book. And this was on my 24 reads for 2024, Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. Yeah, let's talk about this book. It was my first book that I've read by her, and I enjoyed it, but it was very much a very YA fantasy. Like, when I read it, I was like, this is a YA book. And I don't know that I expected that, just because of how many people I've seen talking about it. I don't think I thought the energy was going to be so, like, young adult, just like it was very clearly part of that genre for me. I was talking about this the other night with my friends because we were talking about annoying main character syndrome. I didn't bring this up, but I wrote it down and it reigns true. I was like, main characters have 3 categories. The bottom, the most annoying, like the absolute worst. I'm trying to remember who we put into this category the other night. Like, I mean, this is obviously not just books, like TV, movies, etc., but like worst main characters. My friends were saying like, oh, Rory Gilmore, or I'm blanking, but like there's like bad main characters, right? Then there's main characters that are like in the middle, that like you love them, but they can be a little like dumb sometimes. We were talking about my friend who's reading A Court of Mist and Fury was frustrated with Farah, and I was like, Farah goes in that middle category. I'm like, you love her, but sometimes you're like, girl, like, this was specifically about when she gets very upset in A Court of Mist and Fury because she didn't know something. And it's absolutely one of those situations like, well, what would you have done if you did know? Anyways. But we put Farah there, we put Harry Potter in that middle category, and then there's like peak main characters who like never get on your nerves or never annoying. There are very few of these. Like, I feel like Percy Jackson fits in that category, but it's rare. But for the most part, main characters are annoying. They have annoying main character syndrome is a real thing. And unfortunately, Miss Evangeline in this falls prey to that. It got better as the book went on. And I liked her initially, and then I got annoyed, and then I liked her again. I kept, like, flip-flopping. She can just be a little dumb sometimes. And I didn't always love her, like, inner monologue narration. Sometimes I was like, okay. As a stepchild, that part, I was like, yup. I got it. Jax is giving Hal from Howl's Moving Castle. That's what he's giving. That's what I pictured whenever they started describing him. I was like, Hal? Anyways. Luke? Is that how you say his name? L-U-C? Luke? Luke and Marisol were so annoying. They really got on my nerves. I'm looking at what I wrote and knowing that I read the other books now, some of the things I wrote were funny. But I'm not gonna say them because they'd spoil the books. I wrote, I remembered while reading this why I put Caraval down the first time I picked it up. I said, overall I liked it, but I was hoping for better in the others. And they definitely did do better. Okay, notable quotables from this. I believe there are far more possibilities than happily ever after or tragedy. Every story has the potential for infinite endings. And hope is a difficult thing to kill. Just a spark of it can start a fire. And the other quote. After I got mauled by the wolf, my scars weren't sexy scars. He just said sexy scars, Jax drawled. Are you really listening to this? I think I liked Jax better than I liked anybody else in these books. Also, this is part of, like, the YA thing. It's just, like, sometimes the way she would phrase things, I was like, did this seriously get past, like, I don't know why it bothers me. A lot of what it was, it's like sentences that should have contractions in them that don't. Like, rather than say can't, she would say cannot, or will not, or will not instead of won't. I don't know why that bothers me so much, but that's very much what this writing style reminded me of. It's not bad, it's just not my favorite. But yeah. on to the next book, which is the sequel. Okay, here we are, the sequel, The Ballad of Never After, which I will already go ahead and say I liked way better than I liked the first book. This was the best one in the series, absolutely, for me. It was interesting, it was dynamic, it was page-turning, I wasn't bored. I liked this one a lot. Let me tell you my thoughts on it that I wrote down because I can't remember anything. I really enjoyed how she developed Jackson and Evangeline's relationship in this one. And I got more used to her writing style. I think after reading it for a while, it stopped bothering me so much. Okay, I said, I enjoy the world building, but sometimes it feels like she's introducing a ton of characters at once. That's true. And I said, chaos is, I don't know what to think. Oh, I liked the scenes in the Hallow. I liked those scenes. Like, I feel bad. Apollo's getting left out of these reviews completely, but when I'm looking back on it, I was not entertained by any of the stuff with him until the third book. Then it became interesting. But, like, before I was like, the switch up at the end, crazy. I really liked that. Like, that, it made me immediately start the next book. I was like, well, I have to read the next book. So it was this book, I do believe I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. You can check me on that. It's probably on my Goodreads. It is on my Goodreads. It's not probably, it is. And my notable quotables from this one. In the morning, you can forget it. You can go back to pretending you don't like me, and I can pretend that I don't care. But for tonight, let me pretend you're mine. That is not a small mistake to fix. If you do this, time will take something equally valuable from you. There is nothing of equal value to me. Oh. I wish our story could have had another ending. It hurts, Jax. I know, love. I'm going to take you somewhere safe. And then the last, he held her with the type of intensity that only happens when a person wants something that isn't quite theirs. Very much enjoyed this book. So now on to the next, which is not the sequel. I guess I started the sequel immediately, but then I got bored and I picked up the other book I was reading and finished that before I finished the third in this trilogy. So on to the next book. Okay, the next book, A Court of Wings and Ruin. I love this book. A Court of Mist and Fury is my favorite, but this one's a close second. I absolutely adore it. It's just so good. The plot is like amazing, and some of my favorite moments in the whole series come from this book. Particularly, I think maybe one of my favorite scenes in the whole series is the High Lords meeting. I don't know why, I just love it so much. Like, I want more of that. I want more of, like, their dynamic with the other High Lords, just, like, minus Baron and Tamlin. But, like, everyone else, like, I wanted more of that. But I will tell you my thoughts about this. Oh, this is gonna be hard to do without giving spoilers, but I'll try. Yeah, I said in my thought, this takes the cake for plot. It's so good. And I love the final battle. I do not normally like reading battles. It's part of the reason why I can't read Lord of the Rings. I've never successfully gotten through Lord of the Rings because I get really, really bored really, really fast. This does not lose my attention, and I don't know how it does it because I don't like action. I don't like reading action. I don't like watching action either, really, but this book somehow subverts that for me. Yeah, the High Lords meeting. I can't say anything else without spoiling it, and I don't want to, in case you haven't read it. I'm gonna do some notable quotables now. Some of these might be spoiler-ish, but, like, you'd have to really think about it. So, okay. Mile after mile, a kingdom of the rotting dead, and still I looked. When you know what it's about, it makes you sad. I see all of you, Reese, and there is not one part that I do not love with everything I am. Night triumphant and the stars eternal. When you erupt, girl, make sure it is felt across worlds. Leave this world a better place than how you found it. See, these are getting me now because it's like fresh in my mind. I just read it. You belong to all of us, and we belong to you. This next one. But it was Azriel who said, his voice like cold death, "Be careful how you speak about my high lady. Only you can decide what breaks you, Cursebreaker. Only you. If I had not met a Shadow Singer, I would not have known that it is the family you make, not the one you are born into, that matters. I would not have known what it is to truly hope, even when the world tells you to despair." That's a whole section, but that was my favorite of it, and I was like, I can't copy and paste the entire section, but that's my favorite of it, probably. I have no regrets in my life but this, that we did not have time, that I did not have time with you. Blank. I'm gonna say blank because I'm not telling you who that's about. I will find you in the next world, the next life, and we will have that time, I promise. It's a rare person to face who they are and not run from it, not be broken by it. Gosh. I love Sarah J. Maas. I love ACOTAR, and I need the next book like I need water. Next book I read, Curse for True Love, the third in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. The best book in the series is the second. I liked this series. I think also this series got overwhelmed by being in the midst of my Sarah J. Maas ACOTAR read-through, my first reading of Crescent City, and my waiting for Crescent City 3. It was probably outshone by those things. It was a good ending to the series. I wanted more of the dynamic she had going on with Apollo. And yeah. I don't know. I didn't feel super strongly about this one. And I know a lot of people were really excited about this when it came out, and maybe it's just that I'm reading this months later and I missed the hype, but yeah. It was good. It just wasn't my fave. Some notable quotables from it though. And he loved her. He loved her, he loved her, he loved her. He loved her so much he'd rewritten history. I am a monster, but whether you remember it or not, I'm your monster, Evangeline. Once upon a time, a girl who believed in fairy tales stole the heart of a prince who had sworn to never love. Yeah, overall, I liked this series. Not my fave. I've still heard really good things about her other series too, though, and so I'm gonna give that a shot this year. And maybe I'll like that better, I don't know. Now, on to the next book, the Christmas special. I love A Court of Frost and Starlight. People hate on this. They're like, it's nothing. I'm like, it's the Christmas special. It's supposed to be happy and fluff and not very dramatic. Like, people who complain about it or say it doesn't add anything, for me, this is great. And I also don't think she acknowledges the trauma they're still experiencing, and there's whole chapters dedicated to that, including not just them, but the people of, the city. I don't know. I really liked it. And I like seeing all of their solstice gifts. It's really cute. Notable quotables from this one. Stars flickered around us, sweet darkness sweeping in, as if we were the only souls in a galaxy. I think my heart knew you were mine long before I ever realized it. And in the end, though, we'd saved each other. All of us had. It was just cute and nice and sweet. I just kicked my camera. Sorry. My stand. But yeah, I liked this one. And now on to the next read, which was my favorite of the month and maybe my favorite of the year. Okay. House of Flame and Shadow. There's so much to be said about this book, and I'm gonna do an individual vlog about this one, vlog, wrap up, whatever. I'm gonna do a video that's explicitly about this, that is all spoilers. I won't give any spoilers here. I am gonna mention a few, not all, a few of my favorite quotes. Maybe say a few things. What I wrote like multiple paragraphs about this, so she did a great job keeping it a Crescent City book though, which I don't think is what some people wanted, but I'm glad that it turned out that way. I can't say much else about that without spoiling, but I loved it, and her connections, even like the looser connections to Throne of Glass, so good. Throne of Glass is my favorite of her series, but I really love Crescent City, and I really loved this book. I devoured this book, and like I read it word for word because I didn't want to miss anything. It's 838 pages. That's without the bonus chapter. I had the Barnes & Noble exclusive, so I had the Solstice bonus chapter. 838 pages, and I read it. When I tallied up the time, it was like 12 hours total it took me to read this. And I read it in like, not a 24-hour period, but more like 30 hours. I got it at 9 a.m. on the Tuesday it came out, and I was done with it by noon. No, not noon. By 2 o'clock on the next day, that Wednesday. Yeah, I didn't have any homework. Clearly. I loved this book though, and I'll give some notable quotables that aren't spoilers. But that's all I'm going to say about it for now. Okay, this one's funny. I'll say this. The gods know what would happen if all us females were unsupervised. Absolute anarchy. Cities would crumble. It is on Avalon, and females are not allowed beyond the lobby of the archives. Yeah, our periods would probably get all over the books. Okay, and I'll do one serious one. Those were both funny, but what is eternal, what is made of love, that can never be destroyed. I loved this book. And I'm gonna shut up about it now and talk about the last book I read this month. The last book I read this month, I read on Kindle. Actually, I want to go get my Kindle's really cute, you guys. I've got it decorated with little stickers and a pop socket. I'll be right back. Okay. This book I own on Kindle. This was also a reread. Look at my Kindle though. Isn't she cute? Okay. So this last book is A Court of Silver Flames. I finally get the Nesta hype. I didn't like her reading ACOTAR the first time, and I read Silver Flames the first time around. And I think also I was just like plowing through it. I don't think I took time to appreciate it. And I was okay with her at the end of it, but I didn't like her. And I think now I'm finally to the point where I'm like, I like Nesta. She's not my favorite character, but I do, like, I love and appreciate her, and I also understand that she's healing, like, still. And I'm excited to get more of her. But yeah, I finally get the hype. Gwen is my girl. I personally identify with her. Like, when I read it, I was like, I really genuinely, like, dove into it this time. And I was like, oh, I love, like, the Valkyries. I love them. And Gwen is me. I am her. She is me. We are the same. Like, I just get her. And what else did I... Oh. The other thing I wrote down for this, I said, Azrael has to put up with too much in this book. Isn't that the truth for every book with him? But particularly this one. Sorry to Azrael. It's a rough life. I have so many notable quotables from this one, and I'm going to read them all because I loved them all. I am the rock against which the surf crashes. Nothing can break me. I cannot survive without reading. Keep reaching out your hand. That's the key, isn't it? To know the darkness will always remain, but how you choose to face it, handle it, that's the most important part. To not let it consume. To focus upon the good, the things that fill you with wonder. The struggle with that darkness is worth it, just to see such things. Rhys lifted his head. This is a bad idea. Cassian winked. That should be written on the Night Court crest. Oh, this next one is a spoiler if you haven't read it, so I'm gonna say blank and blank. Blank had loved blank since she'd first laid eyes on him. Had loved him even when she did not want to, even when she had been swallowed by despair and fear and hatred. Had loved him and destroyed herself because she didn't believe she deserved him, because he was all that was good and brave and kind, and she loved him, she loved him, she loved him. I'm gonna tear up. I love this book now. I don't know why I didn't love it as much the first time, but I love it now. I'll be with you every step of the way. Just don't lock me out. You want to walk in silence for a week? I'm fine with that, so long as you talk to me at the end of it. Nesta wanted to crow about her friend to anyone who'd listen. Her friend. That's what Gwen was. Oh my gosh. And for the first time in her life, she felt utterly settled into her own skin. I'm going to tell you that you will get through it, that you will face all of this and you will get through it, that these tears are good. These tears mean you care. I'm going to tell you that it is not too late, not for any of it, and I can't tell you when or how, but it will get better. What you feel, this guilt and pain and self-loathing, you'll get through it, but only if you are willing to fight, only if you are willing to face it and embrace it and walk through it to emerge on the other side of it. And maybe you will still feel that tinge of pain, but there is another side, a better side. And then this last one is, there's so many good quotes from this book. This last one is maybe my favorite. Our stories are worth telling. Yeah, overall, I just loved A Court of Silver Flames. This was a really good reading month for me. And we'll talk about it. So there you have it. My 10 reads from January 2024. This is good for me and my reading goal this year because I'm 3 or 4 books ahead of schedule. My goal is 75, and I said I was probably going to read more than that, and I probably will, but 10 books a month is beating what I need to be at, so it's pretty good. It was a good reading month for me, mostly because it was filled with Sarah J. Maas, but other books were good too. Because I just finished my reread of ACOTAR and reading Crescent City, and I did read Throne of Glass for the first time this fall, I'm going to try and force myself to take a break from the Sarah J. Maas universe and read and appreciate some other things before the next thing I'll do is probably reread Throne of Glass. I love Throne of Glass. But I really enjoyed the books I read this month. I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about them, and I hope that you will find it in you to read some of them. I have said this multiple times, the best thing I can ever recommend to any of my friends is that they start A Court of Thorns and Roses, which thankfully some of my friends finally have. But if you haven't read A Court of Thorns and Roses, you should read A Court of Thorns and Roses. I know they're fantasy, romance, but even if you're a guy, read A Court of Thorns and Roses. I have a friend who's I think his ex-girlfriend read them aloud to him, and he said he really enjoyed them. And also, I see all these videos on TikTok all the time of these wives having their husbands read the books, and they all love them. I promise you guys, if you read A Court of Thorns and Roses, you'll like it. I have yet to meet someone who's read these books and not liked them. If they're out there, stay away from me. I don't want to know you. But that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to comment, subscribe, follow me on TikTok, follow me on Instagram. Nat G. Johnson Reads, or just Nat G. Johnson. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye!